For the first time, you should know we typically broadcast live at slashfilm.com/live. We begin by discussing what we've been watching and move on into a dissection of the week's film news. We then conclude with an in-depth review. This week we'll be reviewing Fast 5, the fifth film in the Fast and Furious franchise, but not chronologically. That was a sort of point of confusion for me because the plot line of these films is so intricate. I had a bit of difficulty unraveling it.
But it's that damn one movie that screws everything up.
I know, Tokyo Drift. Well, anyway, we can discuss this a little later. But before we get to any of that, guys, sometimes during the course of making the Slash Filmcast, mistakes are made. And most of the time, we don't bother to correct these mistakes because by the time people email in with their angry letters, we've already moved on, either in our mind or on the show, or something like this. We just don't really bother to go back and rectify things. But they've been piling.
Also, it would take about like an hour of the show just to get all of them. Just
correcting mistakes like for an hour would really finally purify the backlog. But we don't have time to do that. But a few have built up that I feel are significant enough that they warrant us kind of saying something at the top of the show right now. So. First of all, a few episodes ago, Dave Gonzalez from Latino Review was a guest on the Slash Filmcast After Dark. And we read an email from an aspiring filmmaker, and I think the emailer was a DP, a director of photography, and he referred to it as DOP. And Dave Gonzalez said something along the lines of, first of all, in response to that email, don't ever use the term DOP because people will think you have no idea what the hell you're talking about. It's called a DP. And of course, tons of people emailed in, I believe, from Canada and from Europe, saying that, in fact, it is called DOP in those places. All I have to say in response to this is we cannot be held responsible for anything that Dave Gonzalez says. So that's what I keep trying to say.
I like that you're like singling him out as opposed to just like guests in general.
Exactly, yes. It's specifically...
We can be held accountable for other guests, but just not him.
Yeah, just not Dave Gonzalez. That's exactly my point. So apologies for that mistake. And
also, you should probably know the link of the country you're working in, though, so... Yeah. That does what he said applies for America.
That's true.
You say DOP, and people will look at you like you're stupid.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. But he said it like if you don't call it that, you're wrong. And of course, Gonzalez is wrong, and that's probably true a lot of the time. Also, on last week's show, I believe I made reference to a black and white version of The Blob. That, of course, doesn't exist. And
God.
And many people used that sort of tidbit to discredit me, which was pretty interesting. Rich Dries actually writes in to say... Dave made an offhand reference to the original 1958 version being black and white. I'm sorry, that's wrong. The original version of The Blob was shot and released in color. In fact, it has the distinction of being the first American monster movie to be made in color, beating the quick and cheap films being cracked out in black and white by Roger Corman, William Castle, and the like. It is especially noteworthy since The Blob was made independently outside of the studio system in the Philadelphia suburb of Phoenixville. So that's an explanation for that. Apologies for that. Clearly, it was half-remembered ramblings that didn't make any sense. So apologies for that. And finally, a couple weeks ago, we also discussed the Planet of the Apes, and I expressed confusion about whether or not this new film, Rise of the Planet of the Apes, coming out this summer with James Franco, fits into the mythology established by the Apes series. And someone wrote in to explain, or several of you wrote in to explain that, in fact, the series has been rebooted a couple of times, and that this upcoming film is probably closest to a reboot of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. So thank you guys for that information. Again, I'm not familiar with the entire series, but many of you said that I should check it out, so I plan on doing that. Anyway, those are all the mistakes. Obviously, most of them are made by people named Dave, so... apologies for those. We try our best to be accurate, but sometimes we fail horribly, and we thank you guys for keeping us honest. Let's move on into the show, guys. What have we been watching this week? Let's start with Adam Quigley. Adam Quigley, what have you been watching this week?
I just briefly wanted to discuss The Office, partially because this is the final season that Steve Carell's doing, and we haven't talked about it at all. And I think there's kind of a...
Yeah, so let's just say we haven't talked about it for a long time. This episode is called Goodbye, Michael. I believe it is the last episode that Steve Carell will be in, at least barring guest appearances. And also, we should say we're probably going to spoil what happens in this episode of The Office. So if you haven't seen it, you should probably skip ahead a few minutes. But Adam, quickly, go ahead.
Yeah, we've basically, I don't know, at a certain point we just kind of stopped talking about The Office, and I think there's a reason for that. And it's gone to the point actually where I don't even like so much want to say like it's a terrible show. I just feel like I don't care about it anymore. Like I kind of watch the episodes and it's like I don't even have an opinion about them afterwards. And this most recent one, it's supposed to be this like really it's the emotional send off for Michael. And I think back to season 2, and I actually did have like a complete emotional investment in the relationship between Jim and Pam. And now it's just like I don't care about any of these characters. And then you look at Jim and Pam and their relationship, and it's just like, why is the show still going? It seems like they've already sort of completed all their character arcs, and now it's just kind of just continuing onward past that point, and there's nothing left to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there were a lot. Basically, the secondary characters just became caricatures, right? There was no real attempts to explore them as human beings. Instead, all the focus was always on the Michael Scott character throughout the last 7 years. And look at the adventures that Michael Scott gets into, regardless of how inconsistent his behavior and personality may be. And they kind of went all in with the Michael Scott character, and now Steve Carell's leaving, and so they have all these secondary characters, many of whom are not believable as actual characters, so
Right.
They can't really go anywhere with them. But anyway,
And what's worse is I feel like they've kind of abandoned what made Michael an interesting character. Because for the most part, he was supposed to be the frustrating boss character, but now that he's leaving, they kind of want to leave the audience with the sense that, like, he's this great guy. And it's like, yes, you got that sense with those episodes, but it was kind of like you had to see past all the other shit to get to it.
Right.
Now it seems like they're just kind of make it like, oh, that sort of lovable guy. He says some stupid things sometimes, but now it's like you see these moments where he's like really self-aware about it. And I don't know, it seems like they've abandoned those traits that actually made him more complex, and now it's just the sentimental finale. It's kind of irritating.
Yeah. Well, so you weren't crazy about this episode of The Office Goodbye Michael then?
No, and I don't even know if I want to continue watching for the next season. They're setting up Will Ferrell to be sort of the new boss. Although, didn't they initially report that he's only going to be like sort of a guest in several episodes?
That's correct.
I don't know.
mean, it really doesn't look like he can stay on that all that long, given what we saw of him in this episode too.
Yeah, and actually, Miles McDonough, who, by the way, like I've been reading Miles's recaps of The Office over at AV Club. Just know we knew Miles before he was rich and famous. But now he's doing recaps for AV Club, and it's pretty awesome. I really enjoy reading it, and he has very high expectations for his television, which is good because so do we. And he's basically chronicling the decline of this series. And here, let me read to you from this paragraph of Miles's recap. The D'Angelo stuff, and the D'Angelo stuff is the Will Ferrell character, was a momentum killer. As we all expected, it turns out he's a terrible salesman, and we're even told that he only has a job because he rescued Joe's dogs from a would-be dog napper. It's a silly, uninteresting story development that simply lays the groundwork for Ferrell's inevitable exit, adding nothing of value to the character in the process. However, as much as the D'Angelo side bugged me, there are two clear purposes for the storyline. First, there's clear groundwork being laid for Andy to take over as Michael's successor, if not now, then at some point in the future. The moment also shows, of course, that D'Angelo is a failure in the one space where Michael was an unmitigated success, selling paper. And to be honest, it was the one point in the episode where I felt like I was being shown who Michael Scott was, instead of seeing Michael Scott, the one break in the fairly organic storytelling that seemed as though it was being driven by Michael as a character and not Greg Daniels as a writer. Will Ferrell character, it's fun, it's interesting, he's not really a character, and obviously they're going to get rid of him pretty soon. So I don't believe they've announced the replacement for Michael Scott yet. If they're even
Although they
have
actually have mentioned on several occasions that it's like they could see sort of building the show around Andy, which unless I'm mistaken, does anyone want that?
I feel like I like him, he's a lovable character, but as the centerpiece, that would be kind of strange.
Yeah. I agree. I like Ed Helms a lot, but I don't see the show. I don't see him sort of anchoring the show.
There was an episode with Ed Helms' character as the main character earlier this season, I believe, the musical theater episode. If you guys saw that one,
sort of as the main character. I mean, it revolved around him, but he wasn't even on screen for like most of that.
I don't know. Again, reading Miles's recaps, Miles characterized it as like a tryout for Ed Helms' character being like the main focus.
I don't know.
It had mixed success, put it that way.
Yeah.
So, Adam, again, I keep referring back to this turn of phrase, but yeah, it really does feel like I'm in an abusive relationship with this show. I don't know why I keep watching. There are moments of levity and humor in every week, but the sort of time when this show could be kind of I don't know, transformative in any way that kind of make you rethink what's possible with television. Those days are over, I feel. I mean,
yeah. The Office really seemed to be like what happened to The Simpsons, except much, much faster. And Greg Daniels, he was sort of the guy. He's written lots of Simpsons episodes. He was the one who wrote this episode of The Office, and he's been the showrunner. And you definitely get the sense that The Office sort of started like The Simpsons, I would say, and also like King of the Hill. And now it's just evolved to a weird point. But you know what? At this point, I can't, even for 30 Rock, I'm having issues watching that. Like, I can feel that not everybody's on their game. And so especially if you compare it to, like, watching Community and then go watch these shows, it feels weak.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I've kind of gotten tired of 30 Rock, too. But I will say, like, 30 Rock and The Office, I kind of feel like serve a very specific purpose in my life. And that they give me something to watch while I'm eating breakfast after I've already watched Community and Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that about 30 Rock because I feel like, again, lots of great one-liners, lots of quotable lines on a weekly basis, but that's kind of the corner they've painted themselves into. There's very little room on 30 Rock for significant, profound character development to take place at this point. I mean, there were elements of that early on in the show. For example, the relationship between Liz and Jenna, that was actually like a legit relationship. And now, again, all the side characters are caricatures. And so they really just have to, it's really all about the plot on a weekly basis. And how is Liz going to get out of this one as opposed to how the characters change. You know what I mean? That being said, there are moments of greatness in 30 Rock far more often than in The Office these days,
for
in my
sure,
opinion.
yeah.
But I think in both instances, it kind of shows that there's only so long you can really keep a show going, and I could very easily see us repeating this conversation about Parks and Recreation and, God forbid, Community in a few years' time.
Yeah, that's true enough, although let me put it this way. I'd be okay if The Office got canceled. My life would not change at all. If 30 Rock got canceled, I'd be pretty sad. So
yeah, I sort of get that. We're feeling what's happening because they want The Office on continually, and I feel like if Greg Daniels had his way, and if the other people behind the show, if they just wanted to end it, they would have done it like this season or earlier. It just seemed a natural end. I'd say.
But NBC is really hurting for the hit shows. This is one of their few hits that they have, and they're kind of cling on to it for as long as possible.
Yeah. A couple more quick points. Sure. I just think it's an interesting point of contrast to see sort of how Michael Scott is sort of leaving the Office, the American Office, versus how Brent.
David Brent, and the British Office.
I was like, oh crap.
And let's say spoilers for the British Office at this point too. So
yeah, well, I mean, I guess I can be more vague, but essentially the ending wasn't nearly as uplifting as it's being portrayed here.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And I think I don't know. I think it definitely says something about the way the characters are handled on the original versus how they are now. It's like this one. It's very clearly the U.S. equivalent, which it means that they're willing to keep going 7 seasons in and onward without an end in sight.
I mean, tonally, the British version was very, very different than I think the best parts of the U.S. version.
Absolutely, but I still think Michael Scott initially he had that aspect to him where you were supposed to be frustrated with him and not know if you actually liked him. David Brent kind of also has sympathetic qualities, but for the most part, I would definitely say he's more unlikable. I actually liked initially how Michael Scott had more of a balance, but it seems like now they've gone completely the other way with it.
Right.
Anyway, one other thing I wanted to bring up is in this episode, they set up another sort of subplot, which is that Phyllis is Aaron's mom. And that I just don't even know how to respond to. It's essentially the show is devolving into a soap opera. And yeah, it's the most ridiculous subplot. And at this point, they keep referring back to the Scranton Strangler. At this point, I think it would be absolutely ridiculous from a narrative standpoint, but I kind of just want them to go all the way and reveal that like Will Ferrell's character is like the Grand Strangler. I want to have like the season finale of season 7 be dealing with both Phyllis being Aaron's mom and Will Ferrell being the Grand Strangler.
That'd be pretty. I would tune into that. But Adam, let me ask you. So we know that Aaron's mom wasn't there, and that Phyllis apparently gave up a baby.
Yes, over 20 years ago.
Yeah. So what? Other than that, like,
and then immediately following for the reveal where Aaron, like, at one point says, like, "Oh, I wish my mom was here so she could tell me what to do," and then the camera immediately cuts to Aaron on the phone talking, and the camera pans out, and Phyllis is on the phone talking in the exact same way. And there was no other reason for that scene other than to mirror them looking exactly alike.
I see.
That's interesting. You know what? One good thing I will say about this episode, I really like the bit where Michael took off his microphone and just walked away, and we have that little silent conversation, which is something, between him and Pam. That's something we've seen in many films and TV shows, but
yeah, Lost in
Translation. It was handled very well here.
Lost in Translation, most significantly.
Yeah.
Did Pam buy a plane ticket?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
how did she get past the security?
She had to buy a plane ticket. Yeah.
But my favorite part was Michael Scott when he looks at the camera and he says, "Hey guys, let me know if this ever airs, will you?" And it's like, anytime they reference like the reality of the documentary, it's interesting because clearly, I think The Onion put it best when they said they had a story that like The Office, like that documentary crew shot way more footage than is actually necessary.
Yeah. Well, Jim was like, "You're shooting people in bathrooms now in this episode."
Here from November 23rd, 2009, The Onion has a story. The Office ends as documentary crew gets all the footage it needs. Hold on, let me see if I'm trying to pull it up here.
Yeah,
as the documentary crew gets all the footage it needs. And then here's the story. It's only a paragraph. After nearly 6 years on the air, NBC's hit show The Office ended abruptly when documentary filmmaker Ian Sheffield announced that he and his crew had all the footage of the Dunder Mifflin Paper Company's Scranton branch required for the project. In retrospect, we really overshot this thing by an enormous margin. We would have finished much earlier if one employee or another didn't insist on being interviewed every 3 minutes, and I have no idea why we were invited to Jim and Pam's wedding. All of that stuff is totally unusable." So, that was funny, but the show is probably going to go on regardless of the logic of that. So anyway, overall, it sounds like you weren't crazy about it. There were some nice moments here, Adam. I mean, I did like that nice moment between Jim and Michael at the end, and occasionally you do get a little dusty, I gotta say, but you were apparently unmoved because you're.
I don't know. I thought it felt pretty forced. It felt a lot more sort of organic, like season 2 and 3, and now it's just, I don't know. The writing feels too calculated to me.
That's a fair point. All right. Well, anyway, that's our discussion of the end of The Office, and certainly I think it's worth talking about because, I mean, this show's been with us for 7 years, and we've gotten to know many of these characters, and so to see Michael get sent off, it's kind of bittersweet. Sweet because it's good that maybe the show will end, and bitter because Michael Scott was kind of an awesome character, at least at his peak. This week, let's talk about what I've been watching. I had a chance to attend the Independent Film Festival of Boston, which you can find at iffboston.org. I plug these guys every single year. It's literally like my favorite thing to do that's film related every year. And if you are in the New England area, I would strongly recommend you try and make it out here. Again, it's usually in April and May. I saw a few films. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them just because most of you have probably never heard about or seen them. But I think it is worth mentioning a few to kind of plant the seed in your mind for when you hear about it in the future. The reason we're actually broadcasting a little late tonight on Sunday night at slashfilm.com/live is because I just came from a screening of a film called Oliver Sherman, which stars Garrett Dillahunt, and it was directed by Ryan Redford. Written and directed by Ryan Redford, we should say. And Garrett Dillahunt plays a war veteran who shows up on Donald Logue's doorstep, and they're kind of old. They're both veterans, and they kind of were in the difficult circumstances together. Donald Logue saved Garrett Dillahunt's life a while back, but Dillahunt is suffering from an injury of I think he got shot in the head. So he's kind of really having a hard time adjusting back to normal life. And the film is a really effective portrait of post-traumatic stress disorder. Garrett Dillahunt is an awesome actor. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. And kind of very, like, just by being silent and with this kind of look and stare, he can be very menacing. And certainly I felt profoundly uncomfortable throughout the entire film. I felt like, oh my God, like this guy, any second he could snap and do something crazy. And, Donald Logue has a whole family, has a wife and kids, and I feared for them the whole movie. And it's just a really effective kind of slow burn of a drama. And I really thought it was great. Now, I had a chance to chat with Garrett Dillahunt prior to the screening, and it was interesting because he was talking about how for a movie like this is a really small film that makes the festival circuit, and he thinks we were talking about how difficult it was for such a film to get distribution because it's really, really depressing, and few people want to go to the movies to see these types of movies. I mean, would any of us pay money to go see a movie like this? I mean, Adam, let me ask you this question. Would you seek out a movie like Rabbit Hole at the theater?
Yes, I would, absolutely. Of course, only after seeing the critical response to it and getting constant recommendations for it. I don't know if I just heard that premise ahead of time, I would rush out.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But even so, like, I guess me in general, and at film festivals, oftentimes many of the movies are pretty depressing, right? Because they're often indie films, and to be taken seriously, you got to be, super sad and depressing. Rare is the film like 500 Days of Summer or Little Miss Sunshine that is able to be a hit and super happy, We've discussed this in the past, how many Oscars and Academies and film critics seem to be slanted towards misery porn, which is why people like Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu are so popular. But yeah, I was not at the point tonight where I necessarily needed to see a film like this, where I really wanted to be moved by an ultra depressing portrait of a PTSD vet. But I can't deny the workmanship that went into it. It was also really interesting to speak with Garrett because I said, hey, I was a huge fan of you in No Country for Old Men and also Last House on the Left, in which you played the complete opposite character. And then he said, yeah, it's really interesting because you can tell a lot about the fans by which movies they are a fan of. And the Last House on the Left fans, they are a little bit not right, especially the women. That love they go up to him, they're like, man, I loved you in Last House on the Left.
Especially that one scene.
Yeah, okay, and so for those, the mild spoiler for Last House on the Left coming up, but in Last House on the Left, Garrett Dillahunt brutally kills one teenage girl and then brutally rapes another. And it's like a really
and now he's on a family comedy, guys.
Yeah, it's a really uncomfortable scene to watch. And so for a woman, a girl to go up to him and say, hey, I love that movie, I can imagine that girl, it might be a weird situation to be in for Garrett Dillahunt if that was said to him. So anyway, super nice guy and super talented actor, and Oliver Sherman is a pretty good film. Not a movie that I'd choose to watch if I was out in the theaters with a date, but certainly something that you can rent and appreciate for what it is able to do.
Before you move on,
yep.
Do you guys actually remember Garrett Dillahunt from No Country for Old Men?
I do, yeah.
Only after the fact did I realize that the guy from Last House on the Left, the rapist and murderer from Last House on the Left, is the same guy that's sort of like the bumbling deputy from No Country for Old Men, and that kind of blows my mind.
Isn't that a sign of how awesome he is as an actor, though?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So
he was also in Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles as a badass Terminator for a while.
Very cool. Yeah, he's just a great act. He's one of those guys. When I see him getting work, I'm always a fan. I also saw a movie that Stephen Tobolowsky spoke about a couple of weeks ago called Little Rock. And the movie is about these Japanese brother and sister that ends up in Little Rock, California, I think, right? Is there a town there called Little Rock, Adam?
I don't know.
You have no idea. Okay, well, it portrays this town. I'm now got to Google it. And yes, there is a town called Little Rock. And actually, if you Google it and do the satellite map, you can kind of see what type of town this is. It seems very isolated and kind of there's not that much to do there really, but it is very lovely, and it's about kind of these two brother and sister, this Japanese brother and sister that are in the middle of this place that's basically the desert, and one of them can't speak English at all, and one of them can barely speak English. And it's about how they interact with the locals and how they kind of deal with the language barrier and how they form relationships. And it's beautifully shot, well acted, unique, and it's really just a fascinating exploration of how people deal with the language barrier, and how people deal with other people when they're traveling through another foreign place. And in my tweet review of this film, I just mentioned briefly how I think it's far more effective than Babel, because in this movie you have actually people. This is like Babel, where they actually try to communicate with each other in a very direct way, and how in a very sort of realistic way. Like, as a son of immigrant parents who had English skills, their English skills weren't very good. There are many scenes in this movie where I kind of recognize them from my own past, and I really like the way that it kind of was able to depict this language barrier and sort of depict the malaise of travel and the excitement of travel at the same time. It was very very affecting, and I enjoyed it. So the movie's Little Rock, and it's kind of making the rounds of the festivals as well. And finally, I saw a movie by director Ian Chaney called The City Dark. And this is a really interesting film because, I mean, we see documentaries all the time where we find out about things that are killing us. Plastics are killing us.
Sitting is killing us.
Sitting is killing us. All this stuff is killing us. And guess what? This movie adds another thing onto that list, and it's light. Light is killing us. Basically, the movie's about how humans may need darkness. And cities like New York, which Devindra lives in, are constantly illuminated, right? At all times of the night. You can't see any stars at all. And that's how the movie began, was the director moved to New York and realized he couldn't see any stars in the sky. So he started exploring, what is it about night? Is there anything important about night? Emotionally, spiritually, philosophically, and finally, biologically. And the movie's an exploration of that, and it basically comes down on the side of electric lighting will eventually kill us all, both humans and the creatures that surround us. And I'm exaggerating.
I mean, do they actually talk about, though, like the fact that technological progress, the progress of society, and everything is because we can turn on the lights.
Yeah. Well, they're talking about why we have light. It's really like one woman in the audience during the Q&A put it really well when she said, anytime that you had a question, the movie figured out a way to answer it. Why do we have lights in the first place? And they explain a large part of the reason we have lights in cities is because of crime. Right, like that. The theory is that having tons of lights everywhere discourages crime from occurring, and so that's why more lights the better. That's what people think, and it's also, like you said, a sign of progress, a sign that of a strong infrastructure. All these things that light represents, goodness and progress and technology and just kind of hope. That light represents. But the movie made a really awesome analogy towards the end of the film, and that is that. Earlier on, a century or two ago, having a city full of smokestacks, was considered a sign of industrial progress.
Right.
That you have all these smokestacks going, it's like, oh, this city's producing stuff. It's on the rise, and now we think of that as kind of horrifying to have all these smokestacks. It's like a blight on society, and some of the people in the film think that hopefully people will consider light that way too. That not that we'll stop lighting our cities, but we'll figure out a way to light them smarter, so that there's not so much light pollution in the sky, and that we can actually see the sky. So again, that movie is The City Dark, and it's really fascinating and very scary, and kind of, it's, on the one hand, I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, another thing that's harmful to our health, like, and like a thing that we all consider that's good, But on the other hand, it's like, obviously, we're all happy to find out if there is something that is doing damage to our health and our psyche. So, again, the films were Oliver Sherman, Little Rock, and The City Dark. And those films all played at the Independent Film Festival of Boston this week at iffboston.org. And again, if you're in New England, I'd highly recommend that you check that festival out, if not this year. Well, actually, by the time you're listening to this, it'll be too late. But next year, definitely give it a look. All right, guys, that's going to bring us to the end of our What We've Been Watching segment. Before we move on into film news, let's talk briefly about the donors to our show. Thanks to our donors, Soren Beckman from Denmark and Justine from Vancouver, Canada. Thanks also to new subscribers, people who can subscribe to our show at the rate of $2 per month. Joseph Vucic, I think. artwork by Steen and Robert Kelly. Thank you guys for signing up to donate to our show at the rate of $2 per month. We really appreciate it. Every little bit helps. And you can do that by going to /filmcast.com and using the links on the left-hand side of the page. Let's move on into film news this week. Again, I have been crazily busy this past week and this past weekend. I have finals coming up. I got the film festival. So I haven't had much chance to do research into film news, but there are a couple of news items that I think are worth discussing. The first big one is that Summit has picked up the rights to Ender's Game. And this is a movie that's had a notoriously difficult time getting made in the past let's say, couple decades, right? With most notably Wolfgang Peterson giving it a shot and failing. This time, we talked about this news a few weeks ago, I think. If not talked about on the show, then certainly at /film.com. Kurtzman and Orsi, the guys behind films such as Star Trek and Transformers, are producing this new Ender's Game, and I think Gavin Hood is attached to direct. So when Kurtzman and Orsi were attached, I said something along the lines of, I think this is a pretty good chance of getting made, because these guys are some of the most profitable, powerful producers in Hollywood, like it or not. And if they're attached to something, they probably have the power to push it through. And now it seems like that's actually happened. So, any thoughts, Adam? Have you read Ender's Game yet, by any chance?
I have not.
Oh well, that is a shame. But yeah, me and Devindra, we grew up with Ender's Game, and we talked about this on the show a few times. We talked about how awesome the book is and how prescient it was in terms of things like blogs and child soldiers and child killers and things like that. All things that are very prevalent in our society today.
Children destroying entire civilizations.
Exactly.
It's
yeah.
Predicted all
genocidal children becoming genocidal killers. It's all right there in the book. And I mean, one of the things that's interesting is Summit Entertainment, right? They have the ability to take chances, right? And that's really cool because they made probably somewhere in the range of $1 billion off the Twilight franchise.
Yeah.
And something that's being put out there is that they're maybe hoping that this will be their next Twilight franchise.
Except there is no romance here.
There's no
there's no romance. Not in the first book, at least.
But in the sense of like
one thing that's worth mentioning though is that a lot of people are disappointed about the Gavin Hood thing. I will say, Tsotsi, his the first film that really got him some coverage, is a really interesting look at how kids are living like on the edge, and I believe it was South Africa. So he was actually be a good choice for this, despite whatever happened to Wolverine.
Well, that was his indie effort. We've seen some different results with his studio efforts, Rendition and X-Men
Rendition was
Wolverine.
just boring. Wolverine was just a mess. So hopefully, I don't know what'll happen here.
But yeah, I mean, the thing with these books is that they're really difficult to make into a movie. Like, they're so expansive,
Well, the first book is pretty.
Yeah, the first book, but like
pretty concise.
Speaker for the Dead and Xenocide. I mean, it would be
those are different. Yeah,
those books are like 1,000 pages. A better comparison than Twilight would be, what do you call it? Harry Potter. Yeah, that's what what they're hoping. Like Harry Potter, this $1 billion franchise, and So I don't know how successful that'll be because I feel like Harry Potter and Twilight, they're very much of like they are of the zeitgeist of our current times. Ender's Game, even though it's quite beloved, I don't feel like this is a movie. This is a book that people are still talking about on a regular basis, are still talking about in the sense that they feel like it's shaped a lot of stuff that's going on today. And certainly Orson Scott Card's kind of public ramblings haven't helped that cause.
Yeah, he's gone crazy.
So.
You know what the weird thing is, though, that I don't know if there's much potential for the franchise here. Because, they've Speaker for the Dead, Genocide, all the other books are really deep, and they also get progressively crazier, and I don't know how you can really put those to film. So Ender's Game, it's a tight story. It's inherently cinematic, the way Scott Card writes. So that it could make a decent movie, but beyond that, I don't know if it can be turned into a good franchise.
Yeah. Something I do think is a little interesting, though, is that this is sort of the second franchise now that they're sort of pushing into development that's based on a book series essentially about kids fighting.
Yep.
And the Hunger Games being the other one. Which just seems like something that we don't see very often in Hollywood.
That's true. I mean, it is kind of funny because I feel like that's what was holding the Ender's Game, adaptation back for a long time, and now we have two of them.
Adam, I think you're forgetting about The Last Airbender.
Well, it's not really killing each other.
Yeah, I was being facetious because we all want to forget about that film. But to be fair, that is kids fighting. So maybe Hollywood is getting used to it.
Maybe.
Well, in both these instances, unless I'm mistaken, because I actually have not read either, but from what I have read, it seems like these are sort of based in more of a reality. These are kids sort of being forced to go into battle and risking their lives. Whereas Last Airbender, first of all, like the original series was animated, and we saw that M. Night basically took away any threat that series initially had.
Sure. In Ender's Game, they're not really being forced. It's more about it's more like training, at least as far as the kids know. In Hunger Games, it's definitely you are fighting for your lives. So different dynamic there, I guess.
Okay.
All right, moving on. We also learned a little bit about Quentin Tarantino's next project. This has kind of been a lot of detective work going on movie blogs such as The Playlist and also Ann Thompson's blog at IndieWire.com. And according to a commenter at Hollywood Elsewhere, the plot of the film reads as follows. The movie, Quentin Tarantino's next movie, is called Django Unchained, which is interesting because Quentin Tarantino last starred in a film called Sukiyaki Western Django, which is, I thought, a pretty interesting Japanese Western, right?
Yeah.
And in this movie, I'm going to read here from this plot description. Django is a freed slave who, under the tutelage of German bounty hunter Christoph Waltz, becomes a badass bounty hunter himself, and after assisting Waltz in taking down some bad guys for profit, is helped by Waltz in tracking down his slave wife and liberating her from an evil plantation owner. And that doesn't even half begin to cover it. The film deals with racism as I've rarely seen it handled in a Hollywood film. While it's 100% pure popcorn and revenge flick, it is pure genius in the way it takes on the evil slave-owning South. Think of what he did with the Nazis in Inglourious Bastards, and you'll get a sense of what he's doing with slave owners and slave overseers in this one. So that whets my appetite for the film. The Playlist also describes what Tarantino said he wanted to do with the film back in 2010. Quote, I'd like to do a Western, but rather than set it in Texas, have it in slavery times. With that subject that everyone is afraid to deal with, let's shine that light on ourselves. You could do a ponderous history lesson of slaves escaping on the Underground Railroad, or you could make a movie that would be exciting. Do it as an adventure, a spaghetti Western that takes place during that time, and yeah, I want to do them like they're genre films, but they deal with everything that America has never dealt with because it's ashamed of it, and other countries don't really deal with because they don't feel like they have a right to. End quote. So interesting plot summary of Tarantino's newest film. And I don't know, I feel like even though I loved the way that Inglourious Bastards dealt with Nazi Germany and that part of history, it wasn't really subtle. Do you know what I'm saying? I feel like the way in which the Nazi plotline was resolved was not subtle. So I am curious as to what kind of outcry, if any, will
to be fair, Inglourious Bastards was supposed to be mirroring propaganda films.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that it was a bad thing that it wasn't subtle, but I am saying that it was interesting because I read at chud.com a long time ago about how Inglourious Bastards was really popular in Germany, because like for a lot of the youth growing up there today, they've heard about what happened with the Holocaust, but it's generally something that is apparently not talked about that much because it's not a part of history that they like to revisit very frequently. And to see it on screen, not only to see it on screen, but to see it like repudiated in such an extreme fashion, I'm not going to give away anything about what happens in that film, but to see it repudiated in such an extreme fashion was apparently very cathartic. Again, I didn't read about this many places, but I did read about it. And so I wonder if it will be the same thing here in America, right? Will people find it cathartic to see slave owners and slavery dealt with in such a brutal fashion? And it does sound like it will be brutal. I wonder. And it does sound like it will be. It certainly sounds like it'll be interesting to see how American audience respond to that.
I mean, it's not like these things have not been explored before. There was the Roots miniseries,
right,
which I feel like everybody has had to have seen at some point,
right,
if you went to school in America. And it's stuff like that. We've gotten some other major films. Spielberg did Amistad a while back, but also all those movies generally do talk around the idea of slavery and what it meant for actual African Americans in the country. it will be interesting, I think, to see just like with like Tarantino's style and how he can't make you look away from the screen, how you're forced to confront it. There's always something interesting about that, and I'm down for it.
Any other thoughts on this, Adam? Quickly, anything?
Just that quote you recited earlier. That it's like that's why I love Tarantino.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. And it's really interesting. He's getting to work pretty quickly now after Inglourious Basterds. So
yeah, maybe
I hope he keeps this up.
Yeah, maybe it'll be sooner than 10 years before he makes another movie.
Yeah.
And Inglourious Basterds, I think, did do fairly well, so that was encouraging. Anyway, all right, guys, that's going to bring us to the end of our film news segment. It's going to bring us to our review of Fast 5.
Sullivan. Are you crazy? Do you know whose money are you stealing?
We ain't stealing that.
All right, listen up. The men we're after are professional runners. We find them, we take them as a team, and we bring them back. And above all else, we don't ever let them get into cars.
Home sweet home.
This just went from Mission Impossible to Mission of freaking Sanity.
Stick to the plan. If you're gonna survive, stop thinking like a cop. You're in my world now.
That was from the trailer of Fast 5, the newest film directed by Justin Lin that was out in theaters this past Friday, starring Vin Diesel and Paul Walker. This is a Slash Filmcast, the official podcast of SlashFilm.com. Joining us tonight, she is the senior editor of MovieLine.com. Jen Yamato, welcome back to the Slash Filmcast.
Thank you, guys. I believe it was a few years ago that I joined you for Fast and Furious.
Oh,
that is correct. It has been. I actually went back and revisited that episode. It's been almost 100. I think about 100 episodes since Fast and Furious. So it's been an extended absence for you, Jen Yamato. Very disappointing. Actually, you also joined us for Twilight, I believe, and a Step Up 2 commentary.
Oh, yes.
But good times.
Yes.
Every time we have you on, it's always fun. And certainly we knew you before you moved on to Movie Line and doing a kick-ass job there now. So
thanks, guys.
I'd highly recommend reading Jen Yamato's work there. So, Jen, you have a lot of affection for the Fast Furious franchise.
I do.
Yeah,
we know this.
And you actually liked Fast and Furious, which is the fourth film in the series.
I believe that when we last spoke about this, I had ranked the series, and I still believe in that ranking, which is before 5. My ranking was 1, 3, 4, 2. I had a lot of problems with Fast and Furious, or Fast and Furious. Or For Fast, For Furious, whatever we're calling it.
Yeah.
Which didn't. There were enough problems with 4 that I couldn't possibly put it above 3, which I love. But I think that the new film, the Fast. God, what is it called?
Fast 5.
That's right. Fast 5. Sorry. So I think the new one solved a lot of the problems that I had with 4, actually.
Yeah, I think so as well. Well, let me say this. First of all, I should say, for now, we're going to be spoiling at least the first 4 Fast and Furious films. And by that, I mean Fast and the Furious, Too Fast, Too Furious, Tokyo Drift, and Fast and Furious. So we'll assume that we're going to give away stuff that happens in those movies.
I can't believe we're saying all these titles without laughing.
Yeah. Well, I have to say because those are not the first 4 chronologically in the storyline of the series. But anyway, so Jen Yamato, talk about some of the problems that you felt were fixed in this newest iteration of the Fast and Furious.
Well, let's see. 4 was, just fine for a Fast and Furious film, but I thought it was really serious, and I didn't love the CG-heavy action. It felt a lot of that felt fake to me. Like when they go through the tunnel, it just felt like lightweight and pixely and computer generated to me. And that's one of the things I really liked about the new one is that it felt like they were doing all of these stunts practically. There's a really great train sequence in the new film, in the beginning of it, that I thought was really great and inventive and something that I'd never thought about before. in terms of how they pulled it off and what was involved. So I really enjoyed that. I think the tone went back to sort of the films in this series that were more fun in its tone. And I liked that. And I think that 5 really, really loves its characters as much as fans love the characters from this franchise.
Yeah, I think actually, Jen, why am I even here? Because you basically said all the things that I was going to say about this.
Yes, same here, actually.
Yeah, that's too bad. I completely agree. And let me just say a little bit about Fast and Furious, the 4th film in the franchise. I actually went back and revisited that film, at least the action scenes for that movie, and I had forgotten how completely horrible that movie was. It is really bad, and you hit it right on the head, Jen. You got like basically 3 action set pieces in the film, all of which have kind of climactic moments, and all of them are kind of hinge on CGI. That's very obviously CGI to kind of come. All of those set pieces need CGI to come to their conclusion.
Even the foot chase?
Well, not the foot chase, but
I really like the foot chase. But that sort of started the marketing for that film, so I really enjoyed that. But yeah, everything else was just kind of
anything
CGI.
Related with the cars. I mean, all Fast and Furious movies begin with an action scene, and even the opening action scene in Fast and Furious was good until they had the CGI flipping oil tanker.
Right.
This movie, I'm not going to give away what happens at the beginning of this movie. It's equally ridiculous, but at least it looks like they use practical effects.
Yeah, Lynn said that he was definitely focusing on practical effects here, which could, explain why this film cost a lot more. But I think you can see it on the screen.
I was really encouraged because you got a guy here, and I kind of went off on Justin Lin, I think last week about his choice of maybe doing Terminator 5. But you have a guy here who had really amazing success with Fast and Furious. He could have just sat in his laurels and turned out the same piece of crap. But he actually tried to better himself. He tried to one-up himself. And
he also definitely learned from his mistakes, I would say.
Yeah, and he could have not done that. So many directors just take the easy way. He actually chose to learn from his mistakes and turn out a really pretty awesome action movie that is far superior to its predecessor. Let me ask you, Devindra Hardawar, what did you think of Fast 5?
Yeah, I loved it. I completely love this movie. And, it's been a while since there's just a pure action movie that I can wholeheartedly love, despite being pretty dumb. But, like every great action movie, I think, the level of awesome in Fast 5 just kind of overpowers how dumb everything is, right? Because they're stealing cars, they're doing it through this weird train thing. There are probably easier ways to steal cars, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because... whatever, it looks cool, and it's so good on screen that the logic of it just doesn't work, and it doesn't actually factor into your brain. There's also a point later on in this movie where they have a street race, and I won't say exactly in what type of cars, but they have a street race just for fun, whatever, even though it's probably the worst possible idea of anything to do at that point in time. But I thought it fit into the film pretty well. So yeah, I loved it. I totally agree with your original ranking, Jen. And for me, this one ranks above Tokyo Drift just because it brings back the D's. It brings back the whole returning cast from the first film.
Yes.
And even though I hated Too Fast, Too Furious to death, it was great seeing those guys back in here. And Tyrese was funny in this movie. The action was awesome. I loved everything about it, and especially the crazy setup for a potential 6th movie at the very end.
Oh my god! I
don't know what's going on here.
I know.
But,
okay, we'll talk about that during the spoilers section. But Adam, quickly, your thoughts on the film?
Yeah, actually, I'm almost going to go a step further than Devindra. I didn't actually love the film, but I will say, you were talking about the ratio of awesome to stupid.
Yeah.
I think this is the best example of an action film, a dumb action film, because the stupid elements I feel actually make it even more fun. For example, you have a sequence in this film, and this is just one of these minor little character moments that I feel just enhance my experience tenfold, where Dwayne Johnson, so he hires this woman to come on, and she's looking through the briefing, she's holding the folder, and she's none of this makes any sense. And he walks up to her and he says, "You know what makes sense? and he grabs the folder and just throws it to the ground. And there's so many moments like that in this film. So there was never a moment where I was bored, because when in the previous Fast and Furious films, I don't know how we're going to refer to them, but I've usually been bored in between the action sequences. And in the case of Fast and Furious, I thought the action sequences sucked. Fast 5, I feel like the action sequences are phenomenally staged. They're really, really impressive. And the scenes in between are actually amusing, even though they are incredibly stupid.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say it's a really entertaining film, and easily for me, I would say it's the best in the franchise, which I don't consider high praise because I actually don't really like any of the films.
What's interesting about this movie, I think this movie actually flirts with, comes close to being like a legitimately great film. All the pieces are there. Like you've had all these characters that have been built up over time. You kind of have a degree of affection for them, and you have really awesome action scenes, well directed, with what seems like lots of practical effects. I'm sure that they use CGI for many of the scenes, but it doesn't look like they use CGI. And that being said, the script I just felt like wasn't good enough. It was just too cheesy, too lame, too derivative to really elevate this from being just an awesome action movie to just being like a great movie in general. Very clunky. Some of the acting is particularly bad, like the rookie cop, the Brazilian rookie cop. I felt like she was just distractingly not very good in her role.
By the way, that's
distractingly hot.
That's Elsa Pataki, also known as Mrs. Thor.
Yep.
Ooh, very interesting. But what I think Scott Mendelson actually, in his review of this film, I think he really gets a lot of it right, which is that what's great about a movie like Fast 5 is that it actually respects everything that's come before it. You know, they reference stuff that's happened in the past. The characters actually behave in a way that makes sense based on what you've seen in the previous films. Too many sequels just completely disregard all of that stuff. We just reviewed the Scream series, for example, and that's a movie where every film in the series, they seem to reinvent the reality. This movie doesn't do that. Say what you will about the impossible physics on display here. The reality remains consistent. Now, the one thing that does change in Fast 5, and I'm kind of surprised at how much I have to say about it, but the one thing that does change about Fast 5 is it's very different than the previous movies in terms of the fetishization of driving, and cars in general. Like, watch The Fast and the Furious, and that movie really glamorized that entire lifestyle. This movie is more like Ocean's 11 combined with The Fast and the Furious, more than it is The Fast and the Furious. And I kind of like that. It's kind of reinventing itself in some ways as a franchise. And I think that...
And that was a very conscious decision. The studios actually talked about that. Mm-hmm. At this point now, they want to move the franchise forward strictly as sort of like a series of heist films as opposed to movies about the car culture and focusing on street racing.
And I would be happy with that because the action in this movie was so balls to the wall that you know what the movie this actually kind of felt like was The Italian Job in some ways, because that's a movie where again the cars play a huge part in, like, the whole movie is setting up a job. Actually, very similar to The Italian Job, because both movies begin with a heist, and then the rest of the movie is setting up the heist, and then both movies conclude with one big heist. That's
highly mini heist films.
Yeah, but that highly depends on these cars to succeed. In obviously The Italian Job, it was Mini Coopers. The one thing I will say I really didn't like about this movie is that it was really long. The movie was like 2 hours and 5 minutes long, and I felt like it could have been even better if it was only 90 minutes, because I just felt so much of the character work was completely superfluous, simply because the script was weak. I think if the script had been better, if the sort of forced conversations, like about Vin Diesel's dad, had felt a bit more organic, I think I could have bought into this movie a lot more and actually been affected by it. But as it stands, again, the character work, I think, has the makings of something that could be really great and powerful, but ends up being just kind of lame. So that's kind of
really see, like, everything you're describing about the character work, like, I found hilarious.
Yeah, but I don't think...
if they had actually put more effort to actually make these really strong, believable characters, I think that would have taken away some of the humor for me. I like that this movie is so reverent for these characters that I've always considered pretty absurd and cardboard and I don't know. I've always considered them caricatures.
Yeah,
and it's like even like Paul Walker, who's been in these, well, except for Tokyo Drift, but he's sort of been the recurring figure like since the first film. It's like you look at him now, it's like, who is this character? Like, describe that character to me.
Right. Name adjectives that describe
Well, he's
him.
kind of a crazy person because, he was a cop who gave up his entire life, because he's in love
That's
with
like
Dominic Toretto.
subtext. That's subtext. The subtext is that he's like a psychopath, but they never actually like
You
established.
guys,
Go ahead.
can we talk about The Rock here? Because I think what makes this significant, the fifth Fast and Furious film significant, is that the bromance is no longer between Paul Walker and Vin Diesel, but it's now between Vin Diesel and The Rock. Yeah. And there are some really intense, really, really sweaty, like man stare-offs between the two of them. And this is before they come to blows in that, like with all that hot window smashing men-on-men action. This is the new bromance of this series.
Yeah. Well, there's kind of a four-way thing going on, too, because when Tyrese comes on, Vin Diesel's like, who's this guy? Really? I've never seen this guy before.
I do love the... wait, first of all, Adam, I didn't hear what you said. Not window smashing, but what smashing?
Wall smashing?
Oh, yeah, wall smashing.
They destroy everything within the vicinity.
But,
like, their bodies just
guys,
like...
they are bringing... This franchise is literally bringing walls down.
Well, some people have referred to this movie as a post-racial movie because there's all different races are involved here. But
that's also good. Yeah,
I do. I exactly what you're talking about, Jen. I love The Rock in this film. I thought he is just a smoking specimen of male virility, and. I do love it. There's that one action scene, you see it in the trailer, where there's this chase through this Brazilian favela, and it's really awesome. And the entire time you see The Rock in that scene, there's just sweat pouring off of him. It's just all over his face and all over his body. And it's just, he's just a smokehouse in this film, in my opinion.
That's what you're paying attention to,
His muscles are just they're bursting out of his shirt at all times. He's the most efficient cop ever. I mean, it's just, it is so over the top and yet so glorious.
Yeah, he has that he has the wrestler glow on him, like whatever they shined on him for the entire movie for no reason. Like he's in the building with air conditioning, he's glowing, he's sweating, whatever.
It's awesome. It's like that's what makes this movie so. That he encapsulates what's so awesome about this movie, which is that it's ridiculously over the top. And,
and his line deliveries out of the entire cast are the most ridiculous ones out of all. Like, I'm convinced that most of his lines were ad-libbed because he just... I mean, I think there's one... the introduction that we get to him is him, leading this task force. It's very, like, The Fugitive, straight out of The Fugitive. Right. And at one point, he tells his men to go put their thunder pants on. And I was like, there's no way anybody wrote that line. The Rock just, farted that line out.
And when The Rock does that, you keep it, okay?
Yeah.
I agree. I think also just strictly in terms of the fact that, he plays sort of the antagonist, or he kind of is the opposing force against this team. And you look at, the previous Fast and Furious movies, and I feel like they've always been lacking that.
Right.
You never really feel like there's anyone that could take these guys down. But then Dwayne Johnson shows up and he's like, "What's up?"
Yeah, although
it's really interesting how this movie has it has The Rock, but it also has the drug kingpin or the
Joaquin de Almeida, and instantly when he walked
playing
on
the same role he did in Desperado,
and also in 24. I mean, when this guy walked onto the screen, everyone around me started laughing because he's so personified. I mean, great actor, but he personifies. Evil Spanish drug kingpin. I mean, it's just every time he's in a movie, it's a good bet that that's the role that he's going to be playing. I think also Clear and Present Danger, wasn't he the same character in that as well?
I don't remember.
So yeah, I don't recall. That's actually a line from the movie. But yeah, I think the casting overall is very good, and it is really cool that they brought together all the non-dead characters from the previous Fast and Furious films and some of the dead characters. So
you guys, I love Han. I am on Team Han forever.
It is
for the rest of my life.
Yeah. I'm glad that Han was played a significant role in this movie, and also he got the girl, sort of.
An Asian directed this film because the Asian guy got the smoking hot woman. So I did.
Has
really
anybody been able to verify if Han's last name is credited differently in this film?
No,
if he's credited as
it's
Han
just Han.
Solo. There's that rumor. I don't know. I need to see it again. Clearly,
It's just Han
see it
right
again
now,
anyway.
from everything I'm looking at.
I also love that Han has a line. He has sort of this glimmer in his eye as he says, "Is like, oh, it's like we'll get to Tokyo sometime eventually."
Yeah.
And it's kind of like laying down the groundwork, just like confirming that it's like, by the way, like Tokyo Drift is actually like narratively it follows all these films.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's something about that line where it's like, if you know how Tokyo Drift ends, it's like that's not nearly as like a hopeful line as it should be.
Right. Also,
No, I think it is, because then when he says like she's like, didn't you want to go to Tokyo? And he's like, we'll get there eventually. And you're like, yes, take your time, Han. Go around the world with this woman and
Let's get a few
live it up.
spit on.
yeah. Well, it's interesting because in Fast and Furious, they had the exact same line in that movie as well, but I think people have forgotten about it.
Wait, really?
At the beginning of Fast and Furious, they pull off this huge heist, right? Or they try to pull off this huge heist of these gas tankers or oil tankers, and Toretto says to Han, he's like, "Yo, I think we got to split up. Like, it's too much heat." And then Han's like, I hear there's a lot of cool stuff going on in Tokyo. And,
Yeah.
and it's like, okay, well then, obviously Tokyo Drift's going to follow that. But then, nope, got to pull him back for one more gig. It's like the Saw school of plot lines where they have to shove it as much into like this interstitial period as possible.
I would love it so much if like every movie following this point, they actually had a line about Tokyo. Then keep bringing Han back, and then eventually get to a film where Han shows up again, and he actually mentions Tokyo in past tense, and it would be like this amazing, like, what the fuck moment.
Yeah, the sci-fi movie, the sci-fi racing movie. It's like, oh yeah, Tokyo, whatever. We regenerated ourselves.
Well, what's interesting is that I keep saying what's interesting. Sorry about that, but Scott Mendelson mentioned that there is a scene at the end of this film where you actually think that a character might die. And but then you have to remind yourself that, wait, Tokyo Drift comes after this, so that character couldn't actually possibly die.
Exactly.
And that's kind of, it is a little bit, I don't know. I don't know what the right word. I want to say.
You think it takes it away?
Yeah, it does
You
take
think
away
it
a
takes
little
it
bit of
away,
tension
yeah.
if you know that these characters are going to survive until a certain point. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
And that's why I think, again, I keep referring to Kurtzman and Orsi and their script for Star Trek and how smart it was for them to create an alternate universe with that film. Because
They
now,
should just do that with Fast and Furious.
yeah, they should really just use the cars to tear a rift in the space-time continuum and create a different reality.
You know what? With a certain somebody coming back, I feel like they have. So. Yeah.
Oh, we'll talk about that later. Oh, foreshadowing.
Indeed. One thing I was going to say, because I was talking about, it's interesting having like two groups of people going after these guys. It is interesting for how many of the action scenes that there are like three groups of actors in those scenes, and that's kind of cool. Like you're having the scenes where the good guys are running away, but also the Rock's team is chasing them, but also the crazy bad guys are chasing them too, and the action is like crisscrossing in between them, and that happens several times in this film. I thought that was handled very, very well.
I think so as well. I do want to move into spoilers pretty quickly, but I think you can hear. It's interesting. This movie got over 80% or about 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. So the critical community has really embraced Fast 5 in a way that I think a lot of people find extremely depressing. But hey, I mean, you really gotta just have fun. This is one of those movies you can feel good about. I think you can feel good about just letting go of all your pretensions and just enjoying yourself because the action is well staged. The characters are decent enough that you can actually maybe experience some kind of attachment to them.
Sure.
It's fairly well paced, and again, the actors brought on are really sort of very talented, and they do their jobs quite well, with the exception of that Brazilian rookie cop. Again, I feel like this is a movie that the whole family can get behind, and if you like action movies, I would actually feel okay taking my dad to go see this movie and potentially in IMAX because it's just so. I have a lot of affection for a well-done action movie that maybe does insult your intelligence, but at least appeals to that other side of you that loves to have fun.
Right. Well, this movie is it's the very definition of a crowd pleaser, right?
Yes.
Because I feel like it knows it knows how smart it is or how dumb it is, whatever. But, you see all the action is connected to the plot. It all makes sense. It's all, all the motivations are there. Nothing is too stupid that takes you out of the movie. Right before this, they showed the trailer for Transformers 3 in my theater, and my crowd, erupted. It, started clapping. It was like, yeah! But then they also did that for this movie, too, so I felt better.
Slightly better. I do want to say how impressive the stunt work is in this film, right? You see people dangling off of edges of things that oh my gosh, it looks like they actually shot it.
Well, you have that crazy jump off the cliff too, which was in the trailers, but still looks, I think, pretty impressive.
In context, it actually works, I think, so amazingly well.
Oh yeah.
Compared to I remember watching that in the trailer and just thinking this is going to be the dumbest movie ever made, and I still kind of felt that way watching the film, but I was kind of in awe at the same time.
But
you will not that. But whatever.
I didn't really care much for the fighting action, the fist fight, but the set pieces were really amazing.
I think so as well. And what I look for in any action movie is, can it show me something new? Can it show me something that I haven't seen before? And this movie successfully did that at least twice. At least the opening action sequence with the heist, and then the closing action sequence with the heist. I mean, there's stuff in this movie that either hasn't been attempted before, probably because it was physically impossible, or hasn't been thought up, and it's just worth seeing how they are able to execute it. So again, let's talk a little bit more about this right now in the spoilers. But I think
the one thing I want to say before we get into spoilers, I think it's worth mentioning that at this point, Justin Lin is sort of reminding me of John Woo, in his prime, because John Woo's action films always sort of centered around family and around characters, and his motivations were there. All his set pieces were always integral to the plot in a very smart ways, and this film really reflected that. So I think that is kind of funny that Justin Lin, the guy who named his first movie after John Woo's A Better Luck Tomorrow,
A Better Tomorrow.
Yeah, Better Tomorrow. Yeah. It is kind of funny to see him now, I think, doing better than what Woo did. Many scenes here is sort of like what Woo was trying to get at in Mission Impossible 2, but sort of failed because those characters sucked. The script was terrible. Much of his execution, he couldn't really get those set pieces down. This movie succeeds everywhere. That movie failed.
That's a really interesting comparison. I'm sure many people find it blasphemous, but I actually agree. I think that if you look at some of Woo's early work, if you look at A Better Tomorrow, if you were to translate A Better Tomorrow into English and have English actors play it, people would probably find it pretty ridiculous, And I think that's true of this movie as well, which is in English. But the action scenes, I think, here are at least as good as the stuff that Woo put out in his earlier days. And
he never really had great car chases early on.
Right.
I can't actually remember a great movie that he actually did with cars. Mission Impossible 2, he tried really hard.
Yeah,
he tried so hard.
Chase scenes and stuff like that. And,
but the other thing is that he always focused on family and relationships, and his movies were always called romances for guys. They were male romances.
Yeah, they totally were.
And this is completely that too. So it's kind of funny.
All right, let's move on into spoilers for Fast 5.
Oh, Jerry, listen. I saw the rest of that movie, The Other Side of Darkness. The coma lady wakes up at the end.
Oh, I wanted to see that. Thanks a lot.
All right, so spoilers for Fast 5 coming up right now. Guys, I want to talk really briefly about the final action set piece.
Wait. First, Letty lives? What the fuck? What?
Okay, first of all, does anyone remember exactly how she died in the fourth film? Jen Yamato, do you recall? Or
Yeah.
So,
there was a car incident and then a gunshot off screen, right? Or something like that.
I actually tried to find the scene in the movie, and I couldn't sit through it long enough to watch where she actually dies. But it's pretty unequivocal. It's pretty unequivocal that she's dead in Fast and Furious. Yes.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I did not stay through the post credits. So what actually happened? Describe what happened after the credits in Fast 5.
Oh my God! How did you not stay? Because it was the most amazing Easter egg that I think we're probably gonna see this year.
I think you're right about that.
There's actually two. It's not just Letty. There's also Eva Mendes.
Yeah, Eva Mendes.
Oh,
yeah, she's alive. No.
Did she die in the second one?
No, we just care about her.
Okay.
Or the second movie.
So, I mean, I still don't know what happened. Someone tell me.
Okay, so basically, it opens. You see The Rock in his office. Eva Mendes walks in.
You see Eva Mendes' butt walking.
Oh yes. Okay.
Doing a sexy walk with her high heels clicking all the way down this hallway, and you don't know who it is until she reaches The Rock's office, and then it shows you that butt belongs to Eva Mendes, who we all recognize from Too Fast, Too Furious. And The Rock is hard at work, and she throws a file on his desk, and he's like obviously preoccupied. And sorry, go on. Someone else take it.
Okay, Devindra, take over.
He's like, yeah. She's like, I've got something to show you. He's like, is it Toretto in his crew or whatever? She's like, no, look again. And then close up.
Well, The Rock says, like, I'm not interested.
Yeah. Then close up on the picture, and it's Letty. And if you can watch this scene on YouTube, and if you just watch that, the crowd reaction there is pretty amazing, and I kind of wish I stayed for it.
Do they go what?
Yeah, everyone's like, what the fuck?
I think the also like the what Eva Mendes says is that there's some incident with like a criminal ring in Berlin, right? And then then you see that it's Letty's photograph, and you're like, what the fuck?
So setting it up perfectly for Fast 6, yeah? I mean, that seems like where it's going. And based on how much...
Do you mean Furious 6?
Yeah, based on how much money this movie made, there's definitely going to be a Fast 6 or Furious 6.
Fast Fix is my chosen title.
And it sounds like it's going to be another heist film, right? And now they're going to go to Berlin and go find Letty, which is amazing.
Uh-huh.
What was... yeah, so go ahead, Jen. Were you just...
Oh, no, I was also going to add, because I, for some reason, committed this Easter egg scene to memory really vividly. Eva Mendes goes, "Do you believe in ghosts?" And then the whole audience cheers.
And then it cuts to The Rock, and he's like, no. That doesn't happen.
Let me just talk about... First of all, I don't want to forget what I had to say, which is that what I kind of... wasn't sure if I liked is that the movie kind of only makes reference to the older films without really... Again, the tone is dramatically different. And there is that scene where he's like, okay, it's time to race for slips, where they race for Paul Walker to get that car. But A, they don't even show the race, even though they set it up.
Which made me so happy.
They don't even show the race. But B, he doesn't even end up using that car at all. I mean, so I guess they needed to set up like that character because he comes into play later on.
Yeah, and I also feel like there may have been a cutscene where they gave that character the car back so he could do that whole thing. They had to pay him somehow.
That makes sense. But it was just kind of like it kind of is interesting how the movie references some of the things from the old things, but really moves on into its whole new.
It's like we're better than this now.
Yeah, it's we used to do that stuff. We used to be obsessed with that stuff, but that's so 90s. That's so the aughts. Like now we're in a new decade, and we're all about heists now. I also the one thing that really kind of propelled this film into complete ridiculousness for me, even more than it was already at, was The Rock's just bafflingly inconsistent characterization towards the end of the film. Just like he spends the entire film being like straight-laced. And
he was changed. He was a changed man. Didn't you see that slow motion death scene?
Yeah, okay, and that's like a Saving Private Ryan style. Like, oh my god,
not one grenade, but two grenades.
Yeah, 2 grenades to kill his colleague there. And then that's when he's like, okay, forget about the rules. We're going to kill this guy. And then, of course, after the chase scene is over, The Rock says, sorry, man, can't let you keep the money. I'm not built that way. Like, it's like, okay, what about all that carnage we just caused?
David, I believe you're forgetting. The Rock clarifies. He makes it very clear that only until the person that killed his men is dead will he actually allow them to continue on with their operation.
And then he's also like, okay, I can't let you have the money, but you guys can have 24 hours to get out of here. Like, I'm not going to arrest you, but
But then I'm going to find you.
Yeah, it's just so ridiculous because the whole movie he's been the ultimate like law, ultimate like Johnny.
You
Law.
can't have The Rock in Fast 5 and have him not join the team.
I guess.
Yeah.
That would be a total waste.
It's like frontier honor,
Sure, why not?
I did find it sort of like without The Rock, the plan could never have succeeded. So that was also interesting.
Well,
But-
it's also a
Right,
completely
right. Well-
different plan than they had sped up for like 30 minutes. So that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, that happens all the time in heist movies. Like Ocean's 11, The Italian
Right.
Job, all these heist
Inception.
movies. Inception. They spend all this time setting up the heist, and then something goes wrong during the heist, or they introduce a new element that you didn't know about, and they have to completely change the plan.
Sure.
So I wonder. I mean, how effective is
Like,
that?
how much fun would it be to watch a movie where they plan everything and then execute it perfectly? And it's like, okay, well, we did it.
Yeah,
You can go home now. Yeah.
I guess the movie feels like it needs to.
But really,
be-
how different? How differently do you think the plan would have gone if The Rock and Elsa Pataki hadn't gotten involved?
I think there would have been no plan. Like, how would they have gotten to the vault in the first
But
place?
because they would have smashed through the vault also, but they just had him do it because they had the whole rest of the plan set up already with the duplicate vault and with everybody else in the garbage truck. Like, I kind of think that was their plan all along.
Yeah, they could
Yeah,
have done
I
it,
have
but they would have had to
since-
deal with The Rock chasing them. So that's another thing.
David, I just don't
Yeah.
think you have enough faith
Although,
in this
you know,
movie.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Adam. Go ahead, Jen.
I did wonder how when Elsa Pataki and The Rock crashed into the police department, they helped the criminals steal the vault, and then all of the entire police department just gave up and allowed themselves to be arrested. But I didn't understand. what happened.
Yeah, exactly. What happens
Because
after?
somehow,
Yeah,
single-handedly arrested all of her colleagues.
Right. Well, apparently all the bad cops, which they tell us in voiceover, but all the corrupt cops in Rio de Janeiro are now on your trail, so you can kill them and feel all right.
Well, I think what
true.
Jen is pointing to
You know
is.
that-
Go ahead, Jen.
Sorry. No, go on.
Well, I think what Jen is pointing to is the fact that there's that scene where Elsa Pataki points a gun and she's like, "Stay down." But then the question is, what happens after that? Like they're clearly not just chilling out there. Like they go find Vin Diesel at the end. So.
Right.
What happens? And I guess you can extrapolate that they arrested everyone in the police department and then left to go find Vin Diesel.
I think The Rock just busted through walls and took everybody down. That's how I see it going. In
That makes sense. That would certainly be a logical
Single-handedly.
thing to conclude. What also was in another really weird physics-defying move, I love how at the end, again, Vin Diesel drives a vault down a highway and uses it to smash a dozen cop cars, which was freaking awesome, okay?
Yeah.
That was amazing,
That was
and I've never
amazing.
seen it done
That was
before.
amazing.
And it was convincingly done. They figured out a way to depict each car death in a
Sure.
different way. Shot from a
I feel
different
like
angle.
the physics of that, of dragging that thing, even though it's completely ridiculous, it did have a certain amount of movie realism to it.
Yes.
that made sense, and that's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, because on the one hand, I think MTV did a really great article about this, where they spoke with a physicist about the physics of that vault sequence. And I think here
Sure.
I'm gonna read from this article, which Katie Kalaudy wrote, and it's an interview with Phil Shiwi. I'm sorry about all these names I'm butchering. Talking about how possible is that final scene, right? And here we go. Even a reinforced Hummer can't burst through a brick wall. Secondly, SUVs are more dangerous, even to themselves, than other cars because of their high center of gravity. Going around an S-curve, the things flip over. In the clip, in the last scene of the movie, those SUVs are making 90-degree turns and making a right turn in the space of 20 feet, so they should tip over. Once the van makes the hole in the wall, the vault, for one thing, is going to be cemented down. But these two hauling cars each have 500 horsepower. Horsepower is just what it sounds like. It means the physical power of a horse. And 500 horses seems like a lot, but even 1,000 horses could not pull a vault that much weight. That must weigh, 50,000 pounds along the ground. You'd have trouble hauling that thing, even if it were on wheels. It's dragging friction, pulling a dead weight. You can't do that. And yeah, my heart was just totally broken when I read this because.
But no, you see it in the movie.
You know what I say to that?
They rev their
I
engines
say,
all
you shut your mouth, physics guy.
Yeah, but you see in the movie they rev their engine a lot first.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. That completely explains it.
So
He
yeah,
also uses his nitrous at the end, Dave.
oh yeah, that's
did it
how
with
he's
one
able to
car.
drag it by himself.
Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right.
Something else that I find interesting, not just the physics-defying aspect of the film, but also just sort of the ethical sort of area of the film, where they constantly refer to the fact that these guys don't kill people. Like, they're not responsible for the deaths of, like, these men that certain people think they are responsible for. And yet, throughout the film, they come dangerously close to killing, like, dozens upon dozens of people.
Well,
and
I mean,
like, very easily toward the end of the
definitely
film.
kill people.
Yeah, they're definitely people.
But it's like, I'm pretty sure at least 25 people died.
Yeah.
Well, when the
there's a
vault
guy
goes
on the
through that
train
building,
Yeah, when the vault goes through the
Oh, yeah.
bank, you know, that's when
it's over. All those people, I don't know about them.
they're probably
Just
not.
jump out of the way,
Well,
but it's like a kid, like, right off camera that got it.
Even in the beginning, like in the train sequence, Vin Diesel throws a bad guy off of the train, I think it's Vin Diesel. He throws somebody off the train, and that guy hits this like railing right off the train.
Oh yeah,
He's
But he was a bad
definitely
guy,
dead. There
you
is
see?
no way. He was
They only
a bad
kill
guy.
bad guys.
they only kill bad
That's
guys. They only kill bad guys,
Yeah.
Jen.
Which can we talk about in the very beginning when the gang breaks Vin out of the jail bus?
Yeah.
And they completely flip over an entire bus filled with human beings, and it's totally destroyed. Nobody could possibly survive such a thing.
I sure
And,
hope we don't kill our friend doing this. Yeah.
I know, good plan, guys.
Well,
But, like the newscaster 5 seconds later is like, amazingly, nobody was harmed.
And only one person escaped.
Well, what really kind of sucks? What really kind of sucks is that this movie picks up literally the moment that Fast and Furious ends. Right, like that's the end of Fast and Furious, where Vin Diesel's on the prison car,
Right.
and you see Paul Walker and Jordana Brewster about to get him out, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're about to do something so cool to get Vin Diesel out using these cars." Somehow, I don't know how they're going to do it using just cars, but they're about to do something super cool, and then the movie like cuts to credits, and you don't see what's going to happen. Well, we find out what happens in this movie, and it was pretty lame. Basically, Paul Walker just stopped the car in front of the bus. That's basically what happened.
They just crashed the bus.
There was
They flipped it. They made it go flippy.
Yeah, there was nothing.
That was cool.
Which, by the way, like made no sense. Like the implication I felt was that the bus collided with the car, which caused it to flip over. Which
It was like at an angle
Yeah.
or something.
which,
It
by the way,
doesn't
it would
make sense.
totally annihilate the car in real life. I mean, that's just that's just.
And,
But,
like, you see what happens to the bus, and it's like everyone in that bus died.
yeah. So, but on the one hand, it does set the tone for the rest of the movie. It's like, okay, what you're about to see has no basis in physical reality.
Yeah.
It's going to be completely ridiculous, and it will make
Yeah.
no sense.
And it also wasn't made of CG, which was nice.
Yes.
You know, it was nice to
Yeah,
see a bus actually get flipped around.
yeah.
It looked really cool, and then the immediate like cut to title, it's like Fast 5.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go along with this.
Yeah.
That whole scene was like edited. It was edited very quickly. It was like very direct. Like there were no words. It was just cars, smash, bus flip, Fast 5. Yes.
Yeah, there's basically like a 30-second reminder of like everything that happened at the end of Fast and Furious.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, boom.
But the opening action scene after that, I just thought was so awesome because so much stuff happens in that movie that is just badass. Like you have that, just the concept of drilling a hole in the wall of a train car while another vehicle drives alongside it and then sliding vehicles onto it is so cool. And then that entire vehicle carrying vehicle is just smashed into the train at one point. It's so awesome. One thing I did question was at one point Vin Diesel's like, we're being set up. What caused him to say that? Does anyone know?
I think it's because one of the main bad guys on the train, who was supposed to be they were working with, really specifically wanted one of the cars.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that alerted Vin Diesel's spidey sense.
His Vin sense.
Because I think Vin, somewhere along the lines, Vin and Dominic Toretto became like this all-knowing father figure who's like always got perfect plans. Maybe that's why the prison bus plan was so stupid. It's because Vin Diesel wasn't the one coming up with that idea. It was Brian or Mia or whatever. But like Vin Diesel is like he's like a Jesus figure. Did you guys notice all the like Jesus iconography in this movie? That's another thing I was like sort of like really, it was in the back of my mind. I mean, you've got the statue in Rio. You've got the emphasis on Dom's cross pendant.
That whole church barbecue speech.
Yes, and it came out like right around Easter. Coincidence? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think you're onto something there. Vin is clearly being set up as a messiah in this film series. What I was about to make a point about The Rock, but now I forget it. So, Anyone else have any other thoughts about the ending of this film?
I feel like. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I feel like we pretty sufficiently
There's always stuff to talk about, Adam. But Dave, you were saying it's kind of funny how The Rock just switched sides. I do think there is something to Dominic Toretto that just causes
I'm sorry. I just remember what I was going to say, so I have to interrupt you.
Okay, go.
This happens all the time. Which is the Brian, right? Is the other character? The guy with the beard that they meet when they first get to Rio de Janeiro.
Oh no, Vince.
Okay, yeah. So
the one who's the jerk from the first film, and the bad guy from Transporter 1. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of really, that whole plot line kind of really bothered me because he vanishes for most of you find out he kind of is betraying them in some way. He vanishes for most of the movie and then appears literally right at the right moment. And then Vin Diesel's like, okay, well that makes complete sense. You're back in the group.
Sure.
What? I thought that he was going to betray them again.
I think that Dom suspects. I think he has the same suspicions about Vince as we do, but because he loves Vince like a brother, he's willing to take the risk and to forgive Vince for whatever he might have done.
Okay, I think that's a pretty generous reading of it, but sure. Okay, we can go with that. But you see my concern is that...
He forgave Vince, almost like Jesus. Yeah.
It is kind of weird how he just is appears right at the correct moment. You know,
just have some barbecue.
It's pretty suspicious.
Don't worry about it.
It's pretty suspicious is all.
We'll need you to die later in the movie.
He's a shifty kind of guy.
Yeah, but... And so I was like, when are we going to find out if he's either a traitor or legit? And then when he gets shot, it's like, okay, he's probably legit. So
I like how he gets shot off screen and all of a sudden he's bleeding. Oh,
that is kind of weird. You had that crazy action scene. You could have had him get shot right there.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've basically talked this movie to death, but I think we nitpick because we love in this case. And
absolutely.
Again, I think I mentioned this, but I certainly would have no problem paying money to see this movie again. It's really, a feel-good action movie that I can... It represents everything that's good about American action films. Let's let's wrap things up, guys. If you're just tuning in for the first time, you can find every single episode of the /Filmcast at /Filmcast.com. Email us. Let us know what you thought of Fast 5 at /Filmcast@gmail.com. And the music for this show is probably going to come courtesy of the Fast 5 soundtrack. That's going to take us into this week's episode. And Jen Yamato, tell us where people can find more of your work on the internet this week.
Well, please go over to movieline.com and check me out. Or hit me up on Twitter at Twitter/Jen Yamato.
Devindra Hardwar.
You can find me on Twitter at twitter.com/Devindra. I do all my tech writing at venturebeats.com, and everything else I do is at devindra.org.
Adam Quigley.
You can find my writing at /film.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/alwayswatching.
And you can find me at twitter.com/Dave Chensky. That's Dave Chen, SKY. At davechen.net and ToubleAsciiFiles.com. That's going to bring us to the end of this week's episode of the Filmcast. A couple of announcements. First of all, next week we're going to be reviewing Thor. So tune in for that. It'll be the first of the superhero series of films that we'll be discussing on the Filmcast this summer. I think Drew McWeeny had a really salient point when he reviewed Thor. Let me see if I can get it for you guys here. He basically wrote... what did he write here? He wrote about Thor... it's both very funny and a nice humbling reminder that critics are defined by their overall diet of movies. We're only ever as good as the movies we are given to write about, and when I'm done with all of this in the future, will the sum total of my work be varying opinions about how well people crafted movies that primarily deal with dudes in funny costumes beating the hell out of each other? I think that's an interesting point to make because we're probably going to be reviewing 6 superhero films this summer. So be prepared for the overkill. But hopefully we'll be superhero film experts by the time this is all over. The other point I wanted to make is there's probably going to be, again, no Filmcast After Dark this week. I'll try to figure out something to release. Very likely my Q&A with Duncan Jones on the film source code. So you can look forward to that. I still have to release this past week's After Dark, so hopefully that will be out as well. But yes, quite frankly, we are just we have a ton of stuff to do. My finals are this week. Everything will be a lot better after this week's episode of the Slash Filmcast because I have a lot more free time to devote to the show and things like that. So, no After Dark this week, but tune in next week for Thor and hopefully an After Dark then as well. That's going to bring us to the end of this week's episode of the Slash Filmcast, the official podcast of SlashFilm.com. We're out.